Hi, Overcomers. This is the Overcomers podcast with Marcy. I'm your host, Marcy Ames, and we are going to get into it today. This podcast is all about overcoming stuff you've picked up from the world, stuff you've picked up from life experiences that we don't need to carry around with us, and doesn't want us to carry around with us. These are the burdens that Jesus wants to take from us. And so we just talk about all of these different kinds of things that we can actually get rid of, that we can overcome, that we can hand over to Him, and not ever have to deal with the effects of anymore. So, I want you to know that my book is out. It's available on Amazon. Run and get it. This will go into more detail. And this is really a handbook. This is for you to use, to write, to study, not study the words, but to use to connect with God and find out what He wants from you, and how He's going to help you. He wants to connect with you. He wants your heart, and sometimes we need to unbury our heart. I know that was the case for me. I've had to release so much stuff to Him. And the journey to freedom is amazing, you guys. Am I done? No. But I keep going. I keep going because He's shown Himself faithful and absolutely an amazing healer. So today we're going to talk about guilt. Guilt. Um, First of all, let's review guilt versus shame. So, in the words of Chris Blackaby, who is one of my favorite teachers, guilt, it says, I did something wrong. Shame says, there's something wrong with me. Shame actually creates an identity piece. That is a lie. Okay. And we have talked about shame. That's on another podcast. So you can go back and review that if you missed it. Neither one of them, guilt or shame, are God's way. Holy Spirit does not guilt us. He does not condemn us, for there is no condemnation for those in Christ Jesus, right? We do that to ourselves, or we allow the enemy to tell us these things. But we don't want to get this from the enemy, and we don't want to get it from our own souls, because our own souls lie to us. We want to get information about ourselves from God and God alone. And you'd be amazed at what He says about you. Okay, so let's talk about guilt. So, guilt is I've done something wrong. So, this can be some really useful information, or it can be information that you use or the enemy uses against you. So, we're not going to allow that. Okay, we're going to deal with guilt the way it should be dealt with. Okay, so let's say you feel guilty about something. You've done something and you feel bad about it. And we all know that feeling of I feel bad about it, but we can identify it as guilt. Um, so when we use it as a piece of information, okay, this is what I want you to remember. All that is a piece of information that you can use for your betterment. Okay. So you feel bad about something, you feel guilty about something. Is there someone you need to apologize to, even if it's yourself, or is there somebody else? Now, this is really hard sometimes for people. And it's a skill that really we need to learn. It's a humbling, and that's hard for people. Okay. And I get that. That's completely normal. but it's a skill you can learn, and you will feel better about yourself when you learn to do this. Because as horrifying as humbling ourselves and apologizing to someone feels beforehand, because we make up all sorts of scenarios, right? When it's over and done, you will feel better. You will feel empowered. You will feel the way God intends. Okay. So you may need to apologize to somebody. And again, even if it's yourself, if you harmed yourself in some way, you can apologize to yourself. You need to forgive yourself. Okay. So let's say I go and I say something stupid to a friend. Okay. I will go to that friend and go, you know what? I don't know what got into me, and I'm so sorry. And just apologize, making no excuses. Okay. And by the way, apologies do not include, but you did. Okay. Even if they did something, let God deal with them and what they need to do. Okay. But you're doing what you need to do. Okay. So you're going to apologize. You're going to forgive yourself. And before all that, probably, is you really need to be truthful with God. Okay. There may be a reason that you did that. I mean, stuff happens, right? But is there an underlying cause of why you did whatever it was you did, right? And just be truthful with God. That's all he really ever asks, is for us to be truthful with him. Okay. Okay. And then that's when you feel guilty because you've done something. Okay. Then there are, unfortunately, most of us have somebody in our lives who tries to make us feel guilty about stuff. Most of us will know what I'm talking about. Okay. Usually, what they're trying to make you feel bad about are your choices. Okay. But one of the things you need to know is that's manipulation and control. That's their what they're trying to do with that is to manipulate you and control you. Okay. But here's the kicker. You don't have to catch it. They can throw guilt all day long, and you can let it just go right past you. You do not have to absorb that guilt. I will never forget a friend of mine whose mom, maybe still does, throw guilt for this, that, or the other thing. I, I don't know. Let's say because he didn't come to see her when she thought he should. So she would, however it was she did that, she would make him feel guilty. And so we would talk about this, and I'm like, you don't have to catch that. And, that's all he needed was permission not to do that. And from that point on, he'd talk to his mom and and he'd say, later on, goes, pack your bags, going on a guilt trip. And he just made a joke out of it. Because how do you deal with, you can't change them, right? That's God's job, not yours. But you have the choice on whether you're going to absorb what they're throwing. Okay. So don't catch it. That's your choice. Okay. If you choose to catch it, okay, and it's if it's somebody who you've had in your life, especially like parents, um, somebody in authority over you, who is in the habit of doing that, and you have been in the habit of receiving, now that I've brought it to your attention, you will remember. And you may even ask God right now, Lord, help me to remember this when I've caught that guilt. And all you have to do is hand it over to him and hand them over. Okay? Don't be mad at them. You don't need that's unnecessary. Okay? That all you need to do is go, God, I have I feel guilty about X, Y, or Z. I'm handing that guilt over to you. That was something I caught from whoever, and I place them in your hands. Simple. You don't have to live with that. That's not God. That's not God's way. Okay. Now, let's say you are the person who is in the habit of throwing guilt. Okay. Which I hope none of you are. But look, we learn patterns, right? So if this is your pattern, there's hope. Okay. First of all, what you need to know is, of course, it's manipulation and control. What are manipulation and control? It's witchcraft. Now, if you are a person who does that, that's going to hit you like a ton of bricks, because I know that if you love Jesus, that's not how you want to act. But that's what witchcraft is manipulation and control. So we're just not going to do that anymore. Now, that's easier said than done, I know. But step one, maybe you need to apologize to the people you've done that to. Okay. This is not behavior that you want people to remember you by. It is behavior that will, if you do it to a friend, which is why usually we don't do it to friends, they're not going to want to be your friend. They have a choice. We usually do it to family members because we know they're not going anywhere. So we don't want to do that to them. Who wants to have such a horrible relationship with their family? Because I can tell you that if you're on the receiving end of that guilt, you don't want to talk to that person. It's you do it out of obligation. And do you want to be the person who somebody talks to out of obligation? They do it because they don't feel like they have a way out. And maybe you've controlled them enough, long enough, hard enough that they don't see an out. Maybe they don't even realize what's going on. Like that's a guilt trip and whatever, because they're so used to it, right? But I don't believe any of the people who are listening to this want that's their goal, is to make people feel obligated to them and not coming to them out of love. Okay. So you're going to apologize to those people. You're going to go, look, I learned about this thing that I'm doing. This is a really bad pattern of mine. I apologize and I ask you to forgive me. Just humble yourself. Okay. It is momentary. And you know how much healing is going to come just from you apologizing to that person? You may even ask them to tip you off if you're doing it again. Okay. Now you need to go be truthful with God. Okay, God, I see that this is a pattern in my life and I want it to stop. Show me the root cause. And he is faithful and he will show you, and you begin to work on the root cause. Okay. It sounds really easy, but you know what? This is God. He doesn't make stuff complicated. He makes it so that we can heal and we can overcome. And can you imagine how amazing you're going to feel when you overcome guilt, whether you're the thrower or the receiver, or you've learned to humble yourself, apologize, and get rid of the guilt? We don't keep that in our subconsciouses. We're just learning to get rid of this stuff. So that's it for today. Go out and make it a great day.